Ready to roll?
Yep.
Mace, it's good to be back in the man cave again.
It's actually the Cobra Cave.
The Cobra Cave.
The
Okay,
Cobra
that's
Cave.
fair. That's fair. You know, I love this setup that you have here with a lot of like Amish baseball, your background, and obviously the whole Cobras experience that you have. So, getting started today, our listeners know who we are. This is our second recording, so we're super excited to connect here again and kind of just chat and give some updates on our lives and share a little bit more about our experiences. And we're going to give our listeners today an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what goes into amateur baseball. But before we jump into all that, Macy, you went on a pretty cool trip here to Colorado. Why don't you share with us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I train athletes of all different types, and throughout their journey, I try to be a good resource for them, not just in their physical ability to get better at their sport, but try to mentor them, guide them a little bit. So my trip out to Boulder was a surprise for one of the athletes that I train. And she's a very, very special person to me because I've trained her since she was in 7th grade. So I see a lot of her drive and the things that motivate her. And it's always inspired me. Her name is Ellie. She's in her 5th year at Boulder playing tennis. She was a Minneapolis Southwest kid. Who I saw a lot of myself in the Minneapolis City Conference when you're growing up, that the competition level doesn't necessarily reflect a lot of the talent. And when you're trying to get recruited to play, whether you play club or whether you play, tournaments to try to get recognition, a lot of the times when you beat up on, teams or players, they're like, well, of course, you're in the Minneapolis City Conference. So I started training her in 7th grade, and she's just such a highly motivated kid. I guess she's an adult now, but she started as a kid. And so she decided she wanted to play college tennis. She looked at a lot of different schools, but a lot of the schools didn't necessarily want her because she wasn't, playing that good a competition. And she decided to walk on at the University of Boulder. And, she's one of those kids that has always done everything the right way. And so she started as a walk-on, and one of those kids who's always the first one there, always, doing everything the right way, and always the last one to leave. She's a really bright kid. She's always so thoughtful about the other people that she works with, her teammates. I mean, if you need someone to tutor you, she's there. And because she's so good, she also, it's funny, she always kind of thinks that something's going to go wrong. So when they called her in to say, hey, we want to give you a scholarship, she thought something was wrong.
Yeah.
And just like when I went out there and surprised her, I had reached out to her boyfriend and told her, hey, I'm coming. Can you just ask her out to lunch or dinner or whatever it was, and I'm just going to surprise her. And the whole time she's like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. It was awesome to, go surprise her, because I am just so proud of her with how hard she's worked to get where she's at. The Pac-12 is no joke in tennis. I mean, it's a very, very highly competitive conference. And so, we got to see her. Her team played Arizona and Arizona State, both who are just powerhouses in tennis. But so, yeah, it was great. It was great to surprise her. It's a beautiful place. When a lot of these kids that I work with, to the point of, where do you want to go? And for a lot of them, it's like places right around their house.
Sure.
Well, of course, that's the only people recruiting you, but sometimes you got to advocate for yourself a little bit, and you got to go a little bit away from home. And for a lot of kids, that's their ability to grow up, right? And that's their ability to create more independence in their life, understand what it means to literally take care of yourself, right? And teams teach you how to do that. They teach you accountability. They teach you discipline. But at the end of the day, you have to want that. You have to give that drive. You have to be that highly motivated person if you're going to get to that high level. So
I couldn't agree more. And it calls on my own experience when I was in college. I went to Iowa Central in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and then was out in Tennessee for 3 years. And getting away from your comfort zone, I think, is something that is really special, especially for an athlete. With Macalester, all of our players are from outside of Minnesota. And it's so interesting to see them kind of develop new friendships, kind of get established. And, with the academics and with their athletic endeavors, I think it's a great opportunity for them to actually thrive in an area that's outside of their comfort zone. You have a schedule, you have your routines, you have practice, and then once you're in season, you have games. So you have enough distractions to where you're not necessarily feeling like lonely or you're missing home. But, every athlete's going to have those types of experiences. And, again, her being in her 5th year, having that level of success, that's got to be really rewarding. And I think that's just going to set her up so well for her future. Now, do you know what she's like studying out of Boulder?
yeah, she's in engineering, and she is it's just so incredible to see talking to this, and but obviously and the level of play for a lot of these schools has really just gone up. But to see what's happening with the transfer portal and NIL deals and recruiting is just so incredible for somebody who I wasn't like this big highly recruited kid, but all of these scouting events and all these things that these kids do now. And to hear her talk about her experience where I think she has 13 players on her team, and I think 11 of them are international students.
That's awesome.
Right? So they're from all over the world. And, for a lot of it is like that recruiting, and that's where some sports have gone, And so, I guess to your point, it's incredible to see, how highly driven a lot of these kids are, but also the log jam of talent that's happening because we're still feeling that COVID year and kids getting extra time and and then just the ability to walk on to places now and being competitive, and maybe you shoot for the stars where back in the day you had to pick where you thought you were going to end up, and you didn't want to go too high. You didn't want to say I think I'm a D1 person, a D1 player, but I don't want to get stuck there because I can't transfer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go D2.
Yep.
Or I'm a D2. I want to play D2, but instead I'm going to go play D3 because I know I can't transfer. But to see now with the portal that you can kind of bounce around, it's, I just heard what happened with Duke basketball. Like their whole starting lineup is leaving all for NIL money. And that's like one of the most prestigious programs in the in the last 50 years. And so that was one thing I took away from it, is that, it doesn't matter necessarily, how good you are now. I mean, you're trying to build programs, but at the end of the day, like sometimes it's like, well, maybe this kid's on a scholarship. And so I might, like these coaches, I might lose my job if I don't play the kid who's on scholarship because my neck's on the line because I recruited them.
Right.
They're getting a lot of money to go to this school, right? And so if they're not the best player, even if I have a walk-on or whatever, then that might not necessarily be the reason.
For sure. And I hear this a lot too with coaches. It's like they're recruiting their own kids year after year after year so that they don't go into the transfer portal or chase after that NIL money. And It's interesting that you were at Boulder and like Deion Sanders is the head coach of the
Yeah,
football team,
yeah.
and you know he's such a magnetic figure, especially for young black men in this day and age. And even he's experiencing a lot of transfers, people going in the portal, you know, looking for like that next best opportunity.
hmm
What are your thoughts on what that's like for kids? You know, like I would be in the camp of like I wouldn't suggest someone go in the portal. Like sometimes you have to overcome challenges, right? Instead of seeking the next best opportunity, because overcoming those challenges can really lead to higher levels of success instead of like looking for like the next best opportunity, which may or may not be the right decision for you.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that there is this like, socio-economical side of a lot of these sports and these kids who are getting recruited. So you could have gone from someone who was your whole lives you've just been maybe you've been living on food stamps,
Yeah.
right? And maybe your sport was your outlet out of wherever you came from, and it was probably the main outlet into getting into this school,
Sure.
right? And so who am I to say if you have been poor your entire life and all of a sudden you go to a school and you have a breakout year and now all of a sudden someone wants to give you $1.5 million
Yeah, that's
to
hard.
go
That's hard to
go
turn down.
to a different school. I'm like, I mean, you can pay for yourself to go to college on your own if you want to go, back or wherever. I mean, you literally are setting your not only you but maybe your next two generations up to at least not be poor,
Sure.
right? And so a buddy of mine, I was just talking with him, and he's a strength coach at Arizona, and he works with the football team, and he's talking about how every year, like you said, you have to keep recruiting these kids, and he is like, yeah, we got a bunch of guys who go into the portal, and then we also, because other teams are willing to pay them more,
Right.
and he goes, but then we also have like our best players who, we have these two best friends and they play on both opposite sides of the ball. And like the rumor is that Alabama offered them each like $1.3 million each to transfer to Alabama. And, they, I mean, how do you say no?
Right.
Right? Now they're at the University of Arizona where they have really deep pockets and these booster clubs are willing to shell out lots of money to keep these kids, and they stayed. So that university either matched it or paid them more.
Yeah.
Right? And he is I think he's in his mid-30s, and he talked about like trying to wrap your head around this kid or this young man or young woman that you're training who might be 18, 19 years old, right? And they just signed to play at your school, and they're going to make maybe more money than you'll see in your entire lifetime.
Right.
In 1 year. Now, maybe some of these kids are just top notch, do everything right. The first one there, last one to leave, get good grades, like Ellie, who I was telling you about, is just a great kid. But maybe they're just a pain in the ass. Now, I'm not saying these kids are, but maybe they are a pain in the ass. Maybe they are that diva wide receiver that we see, right? Where they're just everything but imagine being their strength coach and they never put weights away.
Sure.
Or imagine being, their tutor and they never show up, or maybe, and I'm just talking hypothetically, but he goes, it's hard. Like you literally have been given this, and you don't even like shake people's hands or acknowledge them when you're looking at them. You just, I can tell you, I would say I'm acting the same, but if I won the lottery,
Yeah.
like
Might
those
be a little different.
Instagram memes, there would be signs.
Yeah.
Like I'd have about 4 or 5 dogs. You blow out like this one side of my house and
Right.
build an addition. you know, you'd like to say you would act different, but that's the thing he brought up is like, how do you like look at a kid and you're trying to help them and they look at you like you're ridiculous, knowing that maybe they just signed to make $2 million this year.
And I think it's so interesting too that you mentioned that. It's like the kids that maybe aren't the most talented but do all the right things. It's like they should have that opportunity to potentially earn that level of money. But in today's day and age, it's like talent talks, right?
Yeah.
Talent's going to get the most money. And, you know, I can see how it's unfair, but I mean, just the nature of today's college athletics, it's so interesting because Division III, there's a few kids that may get some NIL deals. I think of Caleb Williams. He's the star basketball player at McAllister. He got a couple of NIL deals, but now he's going to be transferring to most likely a Division I school. And, you know, he's a great kid, super smart. And when I introduced myself to him, he was super kind, maintained eye contact. And the type of kid that you would think, hey, if he was successful somewhere, he would earn every cent of that NIL deal. But then you look at, you know, like you said, maybe a diva wide receiver or like a really high-level star basketball player that maybe doesn't get good grades. It's like, how can we make sure that NIL reaches everyone in the same way that are doing the right things and those that are, you know, bringing the talent to the team that's allowing them to win. So, you know, it's so interesting with NIL these days. I think it's not very organized, but at the same time, you know, giving these college athletes an opportunity to earn money, I think it is really important because, like you said, a lot of kids come from underrepresented backgrounds, you know, poverty and all sorts of things where this is life-changing money, not only to them, but to their family as well. So, you know, I love that conversation. I'd love for us to continue on that, but I want to jump to our next subject, and I want to go to your high school coaching. Now, share a little bit more about your experience with coaching. I know we touched on this in our first podcast, but now that like your season's in full swing here, give us an update there.
Yeah, so, you know, the thing that really sticks out to me in like where we're at in this season is we're 3 games in, we're 2-1. Now, I mean, we won 5 games last year. But it sounds really cliche as a coach to say that like your record doesn't define you. But so much of like the things we talk about with these college kids are what they learn in high school.
Sure.
And learning what it means to be, you know, not only be the guy, but to be a good teammate and to be accountable. And those things that you can teach them in middle school and high school form what type of person they are in college.
Sure.
And we have a lot of great kids, and a lot of them have really, really grown up, you know, and you know, I was talking with our coaches. It's our job to tell them when they're doing something wrong, as hard as that might be, because that's not about baseball. That's about accountability. That's about like getting to be an adult, so that when you get there, you're already prepared to be there, right? You're not trying to figure it out when you get there. So. You know, we have had a lot of growth. We have some great kids. We got a new head coach, and he's doing an absolutely phenomenal job of just not only being really organized, but, you know, our motto is, I'll never yell at you if I haven't told you it.
Sure.
But we're going to go over everything. We are going to make sure that everything that we do is taught to you, and we are going to start with the most basic fundamental things, so that we don't skip all these steps and then expect for you to know it.
Right.
Like if I tell you to delayed steal, but you're not really sure what that is, that's our fault. But if we tell you to delayed steal and we practice it all week and you don't do it, then that's more about focus and accountability.
For sure. And your Richfield team, you guys went to, was it Arizona?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
How was that experience?
So it was unbelievable. So we went last year, and you know, part of trying to build these kids' confidence is letting them understand what they do well. And we got involved, you know, I got involved with Richfield because I graduated from there, and I wanted to like get this program back to like how it was even when I was there, where there's so much tradition. And so we did a great job. This year we didn't play any games. We just scrimmaged one time and we scrimmaged each other. And it was so much better because it gave us the opportunity to like just practice and see these guys play and, make sure that they understand where they should be on the field before we go out and just get our butt kicked by some private Catholic school who was 18 games into their season. That happened to us last year. We went down there and we start playing this team, and I look them up and they've won 7 of the last 10 state championships, right? In like that 6A division.
Yeah.
And I look at their thing and they've got like 6 or 7 commits already. And they're in like game 17 of their season, and we have to call it a scrimmage because we're from Minnesota, but they get to call it one of their games.
Sure.
And the first guy we face is like 89 miles an hour going to like Creighton or something like that, Division I, and he's just like looks like he's already a college kid, senior, and he's just chumming. And then we see some of the other teams down there, and I'm like, God, that guy looks so familiar, and it's Kerry Wood. It's like he's their pitching coach. It's like his kid's probably on the team, and every one of their kids look like they're college kids. And so it's like, you have to set the bar really high and expect that kids might not necessarily get there. But there are a lot of kids who are that driven and want to play Division I baseball. And when you build that culture, it starts to trickle down to the young kids where they walk in and say, oh, this kid's walking the walk and he's talking the talk. Right, and holding those kids who need to be told regularly that you are a leader, we need that to lead, and then when it finally clicks for them, it clicks for everybody else.
For sure.
And that's what we're starting to feel now, is just this level of accountability that is going to help change that. So this year we went down there. We had a house. We rented this huge house. We had 20 kids, 4 coaches. A lot of the parents stayed really close. And we have this great tradition with Richfield Baseball. The Booster Club is amazing. They do so many fundraisers. I mean, we ate like kings. I mean, better. I looked at my other coach, and we both played in college. He's like, we never were treated this good on the road.
Right.
I mean, it had a pool table. It was such a great experience. So we went to Arizona State practice, and then the next day we went to their game, and it was just awesome. It was great to give them that bonding experience. So it was great.
No, that's great. And it's funny when you think about, you went on a spring trip and you didn't play any games, but I think that is a really great opportunity for a team to improve. You kind of take out like that fear of failure from a competitive standpoint if you're playing games against, these, Southwest teams that have played a bunch, right?
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for the team to get better. And, it's hard, especially in the Midwest, especially Minnesota, with our winters and the weather that we experience in the early spring. You're not going to be able to get outside. And so how do you, develop these kids when you're stuck in a gym or you have to go to a small batting cage, to get those reps, to be outside, to really feel the grass, the dirt, and be out there. It's a totally different experience. And, to build off of your point with Macalester this year, we went to Los Angeles and played, I believe it was 4 games, and then they had an opportunity for about a week and change in Arizona where they played their first games. And, to your point of last year and, getting your butts kicked by these, this high-level high school team, we played this team, California Lutheran, and I'm telling you, their shortstop looked like a Division I shortstop, made every play, and it's just we hadn't quite got to that level of preparedness because of the fact that we just have to be inside all winter long. And while Macalester, we're not having I'd say a great season right now. We're 7-22. We've seen improvements along the way, and a lot of the times people focus on wins and losses, but how are you developing the players as men? Right? Because that's important because, the next step of their journey won't always include baseball, right? And especially with high school kids, you may not play at the next level, but how can we develop you as men so that you can be successful in no matter what area you go into. So no, I love that story, and seeing the like some of the social media you put out there with the guys, it just looked like a lot of fun, and I'm sure for them it was a really great experience. So, one of the next subjects I want to jump into is amateur baseball. Now, for a lot of our listeners, I am not sure how much they know about amateur baseball, but it is a highly competitive baseball league based here in Minnesota, and I would probably argue that it's one of the best summer baseball programs for adults in the entire country. And we've been teammates in the past. Now we are, I'll say rivals, if you will, but amateur baseball is something that's been very important to each of us. We've both been playing for probably over 15 years. And, we've both seen successes, state championships, MVPs. And, as the manager of the Minneapolis Cobras, give us some insight to, what managing a amateur baseball team looks like.
Oh, man. Sometimes it can be the best experience in the world. Like, there's nothing better than like just a beautiful night, and you got the grill fired up.
Sure.
You just won a game, or maybe you lost a game, maybe it's a non-league game, but you're with your guys and you got the grill fired up, and you're running. I try to run the team like I would want to play for.
Sure.
And so that can be really difficult, but baseball aside, because, I think everybody wants to win, but baseball aside, I mean, I just love hanging out with my buddies, and I love grilling out, and I love, drinking some beers, and, the thing that I kind of motivates me all winter to try to like stay in shape and make sure that my body doesn't give out on me, is just so that I can continue to do that.
Sure.
And there's nothing better than also like watching kids, like no different than when you're coaching them in high school or college or now town ball, is watching them grow up and be more mature, and like letting them just have fun playing baseball.
Yeah.
Because there is so much more pressure, even in high school and, college, to perform. But like playing games, knowing you're trying to compete, but it's like a non-league game and you're playing in 30, 40 minutes away. Maybe we're playing in Dundas.
Yeah.
This beautiful field on a
One
Friday night. And there's hundreds of fans out there. And that's, to me, what I just really enjoy. Now, there is sometimes where it's like herding cats, where you are trying to make sure you always have enough guys, right? Trying to and then everybody shows up, and then you're trying to keep everybody happy, right? And you have 20 players, you're trying to get everybody in the game, and all of a sudden you play a team you thought you were just gonna smack, and it's 3-2 in the 7th inning, and you're like, oh my god, and now you got guys pissed because they didn't start, and you thought you were gonna get 6 at bats that day and you have 3 and 3, but that's not what happens. And what we're seeing a lot in town ball now is guys are going back and they're playing with their college teammates. The level of play has gotten so much better because there's so many more kids who are going out and continuing to play baseball. Mm-hmm. Like maybe they weren't a dude, in high school, but maybe they were a D3 guy, right? And they had all these D3 offers, and they just wanted to chase their academics, right? They wanted to go to like or maybe like I have a kid coming back that I coached this summer, and he's like, I have the itch to play ball, and he could have easily been a Division II baseball player.
Sure.
But he wanted to go to a big school. He wanted to go to Iowa State, and he's like, I want like a real college experience. He's like, but I know I can't go play at a real college, right now. I'm not that big, but you get those guys where they're like a sophomore in college and like, man, I got the itch again, and then they do what we have done in our 20s and 30s to like try to stay in shape and still be able to like do it, and they don't even hit their prime till they're 27 years
Right.
old. They would have been long gone out of college, but so sometimes it's awesome, sometimes it sucks, especially the whole getting releases and that whole thing and playing time, like making sure you have a 25-man roster to go to playoffs, but having to be like decide like who is there more, who is more committed,
Right.
who's gonna help us more. Like if I don't take this college kid who's a pitcher and I leave him off the roster, well, next year he might be really good playing a wood bat league, but if he's not on our roster this year for the playoffs, then he's not eligible for next year. And so there's a lot of that. I'm fortunate I have a lot of people who help me. I mean, it just kind of comes with the territory is having to make those decisions. But I do my best. I try to be super transparent with people. I tell guys, hey, you're not going to start today. You don't have to come, or I also say like, hey, like I tell our young guys, I mean, that's the hardest part is when you get these kids who are like the dude in high school and they're like, what do you mean I'm not starting? It's like, this kid's been, I'm like, when this guy here who you're complaining about has been hitting over 300, okay, since you were 3 years old.
Right.
Like he has every year in town ball hit 5 home runs a year, and hitting over 300, and he doesn't make high school kid mistakes.
Right.
So I don't know that it's trying to make the game fun, but still maintain a level of focus, even though it's town ball, leaving games to go dink around in your car or do whatever, or just not being engaged, or people always on their, like there's been people who are like, they're always on their phone.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of a game, they're just like on their phone. Like they get out, they come in, and they might say, hey, here we go, let's go. But then they just like look at their phone.
Sure.
And they're watching ESPN and they're watching things like that. And so it's like, I'm like, well, yeah, you're really good. And I don't want to be a dick, but dude, like, come on. Like, if not for you, just do it for the guy who's up there. Like, just give him a little chirp. Like,
can we just give me 3 hours of your time? That's
like,
all I ask.
And then the same people will be like, oh, well, I don't like baseball. I just golf. I'm like, golfing is like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to golf. You like to golf.
I love it.
Like, I'm not this like just guy who can just strike it down the fairway at 300 yards every time. Like some people I do. But most of the people who are like, oh, no, I'm going to hang it up. I'm done playing ball. I'm just going to golf. I'm like, you can do that too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you know that, like, you're a pitcher, so you could just show up in, like, the 5th inning and, like, throw an inning or two and eat some tacos and then, like, go home.
Sure.
Like it's you're asking for, like, a 2-hour window, not 4.5, like golf. So, I love it. We could even show them the Cobra Cave here.
Yeah.
I got to kind of straighten it up a little bit. We've been doing a little more renovations in the Cobra Cave, but
that's all right.
I'm a kid at heart. Sometimes I still act like a kid, which is why I coach kids, because it's fun talking, high school kid language, joking around, like, I believe the kids call it drip these days.
Yeah.
And
Try to stay up on all the vernacular.
Or just like dabbing. Like I still dab, like do the dab dance, like every time, and they're like, Coach, we don't do that anymore. And I'm like, I do.
Yeah, right. We're still cool. We're still cool.
I still got it.
But hey, I want to ask you about what has to be one of your proudest achievements, and that was the Cobras state title that you won. Unfortunately, I had to be on the field for that.
Yeah.
As part of the opposition, but. Chat with us a little bit more about that accomplishment. And was that your first year as Miller's manager?
As the Cobras?
Cobras, sorry. I said Miller's.
No. I had a year before that. I think one or two. Um, like that's why you play. And I've had really good teams I've been on in the past. I mean, you guys have knocked us out at least twice before that. And I've always played on good teams. We just never were as deep as we needed to be. And so when I took over the team, I guess like my one focus was like, just don't ever stop trying to get good players.
Sure.
Because you never can have enough guys. And every summer you think, oh, we got enough guys now. And then it's like, oh, sorry, I got to study for my LSTATs, or I got to blah, blah, blah. Or especially now, because the Northwoods is so big and they just are always getting guys. Mm-hmm. You can put a kid on your roster and think he's like your starting catcher, or like a really powerful position like that. Like, oh, this guy's going to hit 3 for me. And, oh, sorry, he's like week before the season, he's gone.
Right.
So just to rewind, I guess, that state championship was, a lot of things went right. We had a great team. We had great team chemistry. And we just kind of clicked at the right time. And as you are obviously, well, we can get into the whole name switch. But I mean, that whole state tournament was everything that could go right for us pretty much did. We hit the bejesus out of the ball.
Yeah, you did.
1 through 9, we all ripped the ball. We played great defense. I think we made 1 error in 6 games. We made some unbelievable plays in the field. We had some really clutch hits. So, at the end of the day, I'm glad we won. I mean, I know it won't define me, but it would definitely leave an empty spot with how many good teams we've had. I mean, the first year on the Cobras with you, we had a chance to go to the state championship game.
Yeah.
And one of the guys on our team was like, well, you know what? Yeah, I'll pitch, but I'm not going to pitch unless I can hit too. And we're like, what? You just went and shoved last game, and now we're going to go to the state championship. Like, you don't want the ball? He's like, well, if I can hit. And we're like, well, no. Like, somebody's going to DH for you. This is like your job, man. Like, come on. And he's like, nah, I'm out. Guy went and stood in the stands.
I remember that. That was a little heartbreaking.
Yeah, but
that team was so good.
But Mike, you realize that's like the herding cats side of being a manager. Is like, there's just some things you'll never wrap your head around. And my dad says it. He goes, don't ever try to put rational thinking to irrational thoughts and irrational people.
Yeah.
Because it will drive you just as crazy as they are. And I think it made sense. So, I mean, I'm glad we won it. It's crazy how the next year we played against you again.
Yep.
And, super close game. You guys pulled it out at the end. And that's when it was like, yeah, we're going to have this dynasty, and it's just going to be you and I, and we're just going to be going back and forth every year. Kind of like, you guys in St. Louis Park do in the Riverview every year. It's just like who meets who, and then like who gets the better, whatever.
Right.
And that's what I thought. And then the next year we got kicked out of the tournament for using a high school kid in a non-league game, and so it put it all in perspective of how serious I take it, but I don't expect, I don't ever think that anybody's going to take it as serious as I do. And I kind of have to do that because I'm the manager. But there's very few people where I'm like, I think that guy might like baseball the way I do. And you're one of them. Like, you're psycho. You like baseball. You like playing baseball even more than I do. You play 7 days a week. I'm like, no, I need a day off. And the other person is Sean Borman. And, you go through these times where you don't get to, it's like a lesson in life. You don't get to decide how it's going to be. Some days you just get the phone call and you're like, what? Like Sean Borman, our best player for the last 10 seasons, gets a blood clot. And now he can't play. And everybody's like, ever? It was like someone just came and, just deflated your team. It'd be like if someone told you that Joe Schallenberger you know, 5 years ago or 6, 7, 8 years ago was like, yeah, no, he just can't play ever again.
Right.
And you don't think that would just like, it's like someone just like kept punching you in your stomach. And then every time they show up, you get so happy because they're like your guy, and then you're like, oh, he looks sad because he can't play. He has to sit in the dugout and watch the state tournament.
Yeah.
So every year we're gonna do our best. There's a lot of turnover. We've lost some guys this year for different reasons, but I don't. Wins and losses are great, but like that's not specifically why I play town ball. And I know that sounds cliche, but I think of myself as maybe, I don't know too many people who, when they're actually there in the moment, are like more competitive, like want to do well. And I can honestly say, like, I like to be the guy. Like, everybody wants to be the guy, but I really, really want to do it for my team. And that's when you become like good at any sport, is when it's like, I won the MVP, right? But like the guy I won it with, Sean, he'd tell you, he's like, I'd give that away even if it like 100 times over just to win the state championship, just to be there. I wanted to be the guy for my team who was, we both hit the 500s, and it was like that was our time. I mean, you guys have won a lot of state championships, I mean, every year you try to get new guys who are going to help you be competitive, and every year there's a conversation with the young guys who's like, hey, you're not better yet.
Yeah.
But you will be, but you're not better yet. like just sit back and watch this guy, because he has never hit less than about 350. Okay, watch his cage rounds, watch every swing he takes, watch everything he does, because he plays in front of you now, but eventually he's not going to. But if you, like, every time I see him, every throw he makes, he tries to throw it like through your neck.
Yeah. Like,
you play catch with like Sean Borman, and every time he throws the ball, don't get me wrong, he makes errors here and there, but he will literally play catch with you, and he will hit you in the throat almost every time.
Yeah.
And it's not that he, he's not just like so physically gifted. It's that starting when he was probably like 6, 7, 8 years old, he watched his older brother do things this way, right? And a lot of it is so meticulous. It's in that game of baseball, can I focus so much for like 3.2 seconds, or like 0.32 seconds, just to make that play. Absolutely. And be in that mindset to be that consistent.
I saw a really great quote about baseball, and it all starts with playing catch. If your team can play catch at an elite level, everything else will take care of itself. Because one of the big issues that we have with Macalester is we struggle with making errors. We struggle with throwing strikes. We struggle with, just basic things. And, sometimes I'll see it when we're playing catch. You see the balls going everywhere. And it can be very frustrating, because you'd think playing catch is such a simple thing, but it's really not. And, if you're 10, 15, 20 feet apart, that's fine. But when you get to 120, 200 feet, can you still maintain that elite level of catch? And, it is so interesting, because baseball is such a funny sport that, anything can happen at any given time, and there's so many different situations that you have to think of. But again, when it comes down to it, it's like extraordinary athletes do the ordinary extra. And then by having that base of really strong fundamentals, again, your level of confidence is just going to continue to rise. But going back to our conversation about, your state championship, I remember, when you guys won that state championship, I was, you'd think I'd have like a feeling of jealousy, but I couldn't have been happier for you in that moment, because I know that is something that was a goal for you and the Cobras for a very long time, and to see you achieve that, and to, even though I was on the losing side of that, it was one of the happiest moments I think I have felt in a situation where I felt like, maybe a loser. And, again, to see the plaques up there, for you to have that memory for a lifetime, it's something where I'm still to this day, like, I couldn't be happier for something like that to happen for you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's so well. So if we're talking about town ball this year, we have to talk about, because I remember when I was like just out of high school and I played for the Richfield Ramblers, and I was like, that's the main reason I went to Richfield, was because we had a town ball team at Richfield called the Richfield Ramblers, and I just like loved it. I was like, yeah, like that's the main reason I went there. I was like, oh well, if I go here for high school, like my senior year, I can play for the Richfield Ramblers too, and that field is sweet, right? So I remember I played for them, and I still remember when we played against the Minnetonka Millers, and we played against, and it was like Tony Richards, and he hit a ball so hard over my head at third base, right? This grown-ass man in his like probably late 30s at the time, right? Just an absolute laser beam over my head. And I thought, I have not seen a ball hit that hard in my life, right? Like, maybe even the major leagues. I mean, this guy was an absolute legend, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, like, he hit it, and I heard it go over my head, right? And I remember being like, oh my God, this is different. This is different. This is us, where we were good and we had a good team, but like, this is like the Millers, right?
It's
the
like
mighty Millers. That was like that first time. Yeah, that's what we try to have, is that grown man strength. Even though neither of us will ever have grown man strength like Tony Richards.
No chance.
Don't care what you say. There's never been a stronger human being ever to play.
You should shake his hand sometime.
I did. Even after the game, I was like, "Where's that guy?" And like, I remember like looking down at him, and it was like you couldn't even see my hand, because not even because of his hand. It was because how big his forearms were. Looking, trying to pat, I was like, oh my God, like, Jesus Christ, guy's an absolute monster. So that was when I first, realized what the Millers were. And then for years we were playing against them. And you said, I'll never go play for the Millers.
Oh, you had to say it.
I'll never go play for the Millers. Millers, I'll never go play next season.
I got my foot in my mouth.
Next season on the Millers, right? So then for years we competed against you. And then fast forward to, I guess that was 2 years ago. And, we battled, and then you guys ended up knocking us out. And little Kevy Hoy, who helped to build the dynasty of the Millers, who I totally respect, really had to go and start getting everybody agitated.
Yeah,
I'm a competitor, but usually when the game's over, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
And he just had to start running his mouth. And the first thing that one of the guys out on our team goes, hey, you guys won. Good game. He goes, but those are really big words from such a little guy.
Yeah.
He goes, you better just watch your mouth or you're going to get run over, right? And, like, as much smack talking happens in town ball, nobody ever actually, like, clears the benches like you do in, like, a major league game, right? Like, I mean, I like a good benches clearing brawl, but we got jobs. Like, we gotta go to work the next day.
It's serious, but it's not that.
I mean, I'm gonna do my fair share of yelling, but I can't show up to work with a black eye and try to explain that I actually got in a fist fight at a town ball game last night. Well, aren't you the manager? Yeah. Aren't you like, well, what happened? I just don't want to do that. So, but with that being said, Kevin Hoy, who built the Millers, decides that after he leaves 1 year and you guys go on to have a great success again, like every year you do. And last year, you almost won it. You got to the semifinals, right?
Yep.
Grand Lobster, which, it's always a guy. You got to see her before that. There's always that battle, right? But he decides that the Minnetonka Millers are no more. Now, to put that in perspective, if you don't know town ball, that would be like the New York Yankees. Always been good, always had a huge payroll, always had a nice field, and always had 17 different, well, the Yankees only got a couple jerseys, right? But and he decides that the Millers will be no more. So he decides he's doing it. So Now you guys are going to be the Minnetonka Monarchs.
Yep.
Which, as much as I'm going to make fun of you, that's what we do. That's fine. Monarchy, not Monarchs, but I'm still going to send you butterfly photos.
That's
all the
fine.
time.
That's fair.
But so, talk to me about that.
It's so interesting because when I first started on the Millers, when I first met Kevin, we had this great relationship. I had traveled to his summer home in Arizona. I've done a lot of events. I've known his kids forever. And he did a lot of great things for the Minnetonka community. Now, over the course of like the past couple of years, there was some sort of falling out between Kevin and some of our players. And what's so interesting is Kevin's attitude towards the Millers really changed when we hadn't won a state title for a couple of years and our team consistently got younger. And when he started on the Millers, he was with his boys like Tony Richards, Chris Urbane, C's, Matt Parrington, and that dynamic really changed. And so there wasn't necessarily the same level of commitment from our younger players. And what Kev did a really great job of is he earned a lot of money and he was able to, fund our team in a way that a lot of amateur baseball teams don't have an ability to do. So, being able to play at Minnetonka High School, he paid for the lights, the umpires, our uniforms, our field fees, our league dues, team fees, bats, equipment. And, I really can't thank him enough for doing those things for our teams. But the one thing that really frustrates me is the way he handled his exit and ultimately shutting down the Millers. Because in my opinion, the Millers, yes, he is, the owner of it, but he doesn't necessarily own, the team. The one thing I'm disappointed about is the Miller legacy is now dead. It's no more. And it ends with Kevin. And the unfortunate thing is, if you're going to leave a legacy, you build it up into something so that it can continue on for as long as possible. And as we kind of transition into, being the Monarchs, we're experiencing different things. Like, how are we going to raise funds? What are we going to do for uniforms? What are we going to do for equipment? And, we have a great system in place, and we still have, mostly our same team of older guys that are, kind of taking over those responsibilities. But like anything in life, it's, how you treat people is really what your legacy is going to leave. And, the way he handled his exit, it's just unfortunate because, I don't have any ill will towards him. He didn't have the falling out with me. But, does my time at the Millers not matter to him? Does my commitment to being at every single game that I possibly can be at, doing our the Minnetonka youth clinics, being a part of the community, those are the types of things where it's doesn't even matter to someone that I cared about, deeply for a very long time. And while it is unfortunate, like anything in life, is you have to move on, right? And I'm in the camp of, if Kev chooses to handle it this way, that's fine. Take it. Do whatever you want with it. You want to take your toys, go home with them so no one else can play with them.
Yeah.
Good for you. But at the end of the day, I just want to play baseball.
Absolutely.
And,
you deserve that.
Yeah.
And you deserve it.
Exactly.
And even, the most dramatic things that happen, it's weird. Every team, oh man, never heard.
Yeah.
And you just start taking back, wait, you really want to go out like this?
Yeah. That's the unfortunate side.
I've been to your house. We were best friends. Hey, you want to go play for a different team? Totally fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Or just explain yourself.
Right.
But messages get so misconstrued when they're through other people.
Oh, you ain't lying.
Where it's I know that about. I used to be man, this dude is nuts.
Yeah.
I'm super competitive, but
right.
This dude's still mad from
10 years ago.
Yeah, earlier that year, the
That's
one
so
year
bad.
we freaked out. We whooped your ass over at Stockman's, and I was thinking, damn it. I was that was fun, but I'm pissed because if we play them, they're going to be extra ready to want to whoop our ass, And then it's over.
Right.
It's over. That was a good game. I wish after that state tournament game, I wish we wouldn't have whooped their ass in Stockman's.
Yeah.
I was I wish they would have whooped our ass at Stockman's, so then they were overconfident.
Yeah. And again, I wish he would have handled it different. And, if Kev were to ever listen to this podcast, I don't hold anything against you because, at the end of the day, I still get to play baseball. I still get to, do what I call rise and go. I'm still chasing my dream of, baseball is my true passion. And
100%.
Kev can never take that away from me. And,
100%.
with the team, it kind of reminds me, too, of, like, my exit from the Cobras. It was like, I'll never go play for the Millers. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm going.
Yeah, but you also think of yourself as how old were you then? Like young.
Oh,
right?
boy, I was probably 22, 23.
Yeah, so you think of like, what would you tell your 22-year-old self? And it would probably be like, and I don't know how you handled it, but like, as we become adults, like the way people handle that.
Right.
Like, hey man, just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, like, yo, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. If you played for one season and I don't even know, like, whatever, you didn't hang out, totally fine.
Yeah.
Text me. But, like before, if I were him, before I do this, just like, when people leave, it's like, wait a minute, like, that's it? Like, you just, like, you're gone and you're just, like, done. Like, we're never going to talk again. Like, we've hung out so much. Like, you were, like, friends. Like, weddings or, like, you were at his house. Like, we were at it. Like, the things that you are going to hold on to as a badge, you have to live with.
Correct.
Because you decided to make it like that. If you didn't speak up and say, hey, blah, 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 that's one thing. But, like, Kevin's the type of guy where you guys would lose, like, a non-league game in
it's like the world was ending.
And, an hour and a half away, you got 9 guys, and they're not your dudes.
Yeah.
And he's sending emails.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, we beat your ass in Stockman's because you didn't have everybody.
Oh, you should have seen that.
And we did. And I heard about that email. You guys really even care? It's like, well,
I showed up.
Just rewind.
But nice. You know what it's like. And even though I was on the Cobras for 1 year, I still maintain just this beautiful relationship with you. And that's kind of like how I want to live my life. Is I want to develop these great relationships. Totally. I don't want people to have an ill will towards me, and it's like I want to affect people in a positive way. And that's kind of just the unfortunate thing is I think Kevin just burned a lot of bridges, not only with us but with Minnesota Baseball, the Minnesota Baseball Association, other teams. And so like now like we tend to like struggle to schedule teams because there's almost like this bad taste in their mouth about like how Kev handled a lot of things. But again, at the end of the day, our season starts here in a little under a month, and once you get on that field, nothing else matters, right? You're there, you're enjoying the game that you love, and it is so interesting because there's a lot of talk in the amateur baseball circles about our name change, how things are going to be different, but at the same time, it's all going to be the same. We have the same team.
You play
same
baseball
field.
because it's fun. You don't celebrate when you win during the season. You do, but it's not like, oh my God, we won the state tournament. It's like you play all year to have fun, hang out with your buddies. As everybody knows, there's a lot of drama that happens in town ball, right? And whether it be between teams or playing time or calling your teammates out. The big difference is there's a lot of people who just had a bad day.
Yeah.
Your boss yelled at you. You were struggling to get to the game in traffic, and you couldn't get around somebody, and then they cut you off, and you show up to the field all fired up, and then somebody says something smart to you, and it's your boy, so you snap back at him because whatever. There's just a lot of drama. One of the best stories I have at town ball, and then before we're done, is this is 22-year-old Mason, right? And I'm on the Cobras, and I'm running late to a game.
Yeah.
And Andre, who is he's like the head of all the umpires,